Hello, everyone. Welcome back to 3 News Now. I'm Stephanie Haney. It's Tuesday, November 3rd, also known as Election Day, the final day of voting here in the 2020 presidential and general election. Thanks for choosing to be here to get filled in on everything that's impacting you here in Northeast Ohio. 3 News and WKYC is your home for everything you need to know as we go through the day today and look at the early results and the things that are coming in. We have our live blog up on WKYC.com so you can see updates about what's happening in real time out at the polls today. One of our latest updates came from our 3 News Austin Love, who was currently in line at that point to vote in Westlake. A little bit of a line there at that point. Right around 1 p.m., 3 News captured a picture of a long voting line in Broadview, and the crew said that the line went completely around the building at that point with a wait longer than 2 hours. Quite a bit of a wait there. We're also hearing reports of long waits at other polling precincts around Ohio. Keep in mind, if you are in line to vote when the polls close tonight at 7:30 p.m., you do not have to leave the line. You are legally required to be permitted to cast your vote. So if you are in line, again, when the polls close at 7:30 p.m., you are able to vote. Keep that in mind. Know your voting rights. And of course, wear that mask, and no campaign materials, by the way. Keep that in mind because there are restrictions on campaign materials that you can have within a certain distance of polling locations. So not the time to be wearing that campaign hat or that campaign t-shirt when you go to cast your vote today. Now, the candidates have been very active on social media today. Of course, there are lots of races that we are watching here in Ohio, but the big one that everyone is talking about nationwide is for who will be our next president, between current President Donald Trump and Democratic candidate Joe Biden. Both of them tweeting out campaign messaging, of course, today, calling on people to get out and vote, do your civic duty, and show up at the polls. President Donald Trump tweeted a video of what he said was a parade for him happening in Nigeria. Former Vice President Joe Biden also tweeted out talking about a call to action from the late Representative John Lewis, the man who was known as the conscience of Congress, talking about his message to get out and vote. So overwhelmingly, that's what the candidates have been talking about today. We do have more about that up on WKYC.com and our WKYC app. But now we need to turn to the latest numbers from the Ohio Department of Health when it comes to COVID-19 here in Ohio. Not a great picture today on Election Day here in Ohio. The total number of daily cases reported in the last 24 hours has shattered the latest record in several weeks now, when we've seen day after day after day of record-breaking COVID-19 numbers. Now we have a number over 4,000 for the first time, and also a record positivity rating, not a record positivity rating, but the highest that we've seen since May. The total number of COVID-19 cases reported in the last 24 hours is 4,229. Again, this is the first time those daily numbers have been over 4,000, and by quite a bit there. As for that rating of the positivity rate of tests, it's at 7% for the 7-day average. That's as of November 1st. And that's the highest level, as I said, since we have seen since May. The latest daily rate data that we have is from October 31st, and that was 6.9%. So when we talk about that percentage, remember, we're talking about the percentage of COVID-19 tests that are coming back positive. So that speaks to the claim that some people have made that the reason that we are seeing more positive cases is because we are doing more testing, but the percentages are higher of the tests that are coming back. So that is not accurate in and of itself. That is not the only reason that we are seeing more cases of COVID-19. In the last 24 hours, we have seen 33 new reported deaths. That's down just slightly from yesterday when there were 37 new reported deaths. Now, the number of new hospitalizations and active hospitalizations is also up. The number of new hospitalizations in the last 24 hours, over 200 for the first time in a little while. 213 new hospitalizations in the last 24 hours. And that brings the total number of people who are hospitalized right now with COVID-19 to almost 2,000. That number is at 1,960 right now. And 509 of those people are being treated in the ICU. So that's a little over 1/4 of the people who are hospitalized right now for COVID-19 have to be treated in the intensive care unit. We've seen 25 new ICU admissions in the last 24 hours. Now let's take a look at the national and the global numbers for COVID-19. Here in the U.S., the total number of COVID-19 cases is now over 9.3 million. That number is 9,323,852. Again, this number dates back to when we first became aware of COVID-19 being present in the U.S. The total number of deaths in the U.S. is now at 231,968, with all of these numbers coming from Johns Hopkins University. And the U.S. is still holding steady with a significant percentage of the global cases and the global deaths. Again, the U.S. has about 4% of the global population, but about 20% of the COVID-19 cases and 19.2% of the COVID-19 deaths. Globally, the total number of COVID cases is now at 47,423,447. The number of deaths globally is now at 1,209,927. Now, speaking of COVID-19, if you remember, not that long ago, we had Dr. Amy Acton leading the way here in Ohio alongside Governor Mike DeWine as our Ohio health director. She then stepped down in June. Well, in a recent interview with The New Yorker, Dr. Acton is talking about why she stepped down. There were, of course, lots of issues that she was facing. She was actually confronted with death threats, also challenges to the power of the Ohio Department of Health. There was actually a bill that was passed in the Ohio House but did not go on to pass in the Senate in order to curb Dr. Acton's power. However, again, that did not pass. That did not go on to be presented to Governor Mike DeWine. But she's now telling The New Yorker that one of the reasons that she resigned is because she thought she might be forced to sign health orders that violated her Hippocratic oath to do no harm. So a clear tension there in the direction of where Dr. Acton thought that the orders should be going. Dr. Acton told The New Yorker, "This isn't just a be nice message. This is the world's on fire and we have to fight right now." Very strong words from Dr. Acton, who was called by the New York Times as the leader we all wish we had and was praised for her calm demeanor. But now she's saying the world is on fire and we have to fight right now, as we are seeing record-breaking numbers of cases here in Ohio for the first time in the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, because of the pandemic and safety concerns, there have been a lot of early voting across the country, particularly here in Ohio. Here in Ohio, 3.4 million Ohioans cast ballots in early voting. That's both absentee by mail, dropping off absentee ballots in person, and also early in-person voting. Now, previously, Ohio has never surpassed 2 million total votes in the early voting period. And again, this is due in part to people wanting to avoid those long lines and those tight quarters at polling locations, which are historically not particularly large in terms of space on Election Day. Just to give you a look at the statewide statistics that we have provided to us by the Secretary of State, there are about 8.1 million registered voters in Ohio. So 3.4 million people have already voted. We do know that there are about 243,000 outstanding absentee and provisional ballots that are out there that have been legally submitted and do still need to be counted, are still available for counting, as long as if it's an absentee ballot, it was postmarked by November 2nd. And if it was a provisional ballot, that's either cast today at the polls or cast during the early voting period. Now, with all of this information in mind, Governor Mike DeWine went on CNN today and talked about what he expects for the results here in Ohio. He was talking to Aaron Burnett this afternoon, and he said that he believes Donald Trump will squeak out, those were DeWine's words, a win here in Ohio, and does expect to have some sort of idea of what that's going to look like tonight in Ohio. Here's what DeWine said. He said the president's going to do well in the Ohio Valley, which is historically a Democratic area, but that includes Steubenville, Youngstown, and the Mahoning Valley and the area along the river. He also said that the president will do well in the rural counties in the state, but he'll do weaker in some of our suburbs, those suburbs around in Columbus, for example, Governor Mike DeWine said. He said it's going to be a closer race. The president did win Ohio by a large margin in 2016 against former Secretary of State, then the Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton. But DeWine says he thinks he's going to win it this time, though perhaps not by quite a large margin. He says the intensity is there and the ground game has been strong. Now, here's a note about how the ballots will be counted here in Ohio. Those absentee ballots that have arrived at the County Board of Elections, those will be counted first. The polls close at 7:30 p.m. and those ballots have already been processed. That's something that the state of Ohio does permit to happen. So they've been processed, they've had the signatures verified, they're open, they're ready to be scanned. So starting at 7:30 p.m., those absentee ballots will be the first ballots counted here in the state of Ohio. So DeWine says he expects early numbers to come back in favor of Joe Biden. And then from that point, for the rest of the night, as the in-person voting results roll in, he said that he expects to see the president trying to catch Biden. DeWine said either he will or he won't. Obviously, it's going to be one of those two things. But Governor Mike DeWine thinks that he will. DeWine will also be speaking with our very own Russ Mitchell today at 5:30 p.m. on What's New, so make sure you tune into that. If you don't have cable, you can watch that in the WKYC app for free. Just open up your app and click the watch button, which is down in the bottom right corner, and then you'll be able to see that live broadcast. Now, a note about what Governor Mike DeWine said about expecting to see some results here in Ohio on Tuesday night. Technically, from a legal perspective, the election results that come in on election night are never final here in Ohio. I've just posted an article about this on WKYC.com and our WKYC app, as well as a video on the WKYC YouTube page. I'll be tweeting that out in just a moment. But the important thing to remember here is that because Ohio does allow those absentee ballots to come in after Election Day, there's a period of time after Election Day when votes are still coming in that do still need to be counted. So election results are never finalized on election night here in Ohio. And in Ohio, voters have up until 10 days after the election for those ballots to arrive at the County Board of Elections. So that takes us all the way out to November 13th. That means that the County Board of Elections can't even start the process of officially putting their voting reports together until November 14th. And those are due to the Secretary of State by November 18th. So the long and short of it is November 18th is the earliest possible day that we could have an official final election result in Ohio, and that's barring any other issues with any of the voting, which has not been anticipated by election officials here in Ohio. And the deadline for certifying the election here in Ohio by our Secretary of State at the latest is November 28th. Again, that's barring any other legal challenges or anything to that effect, which is not necessarily expected here in Ohio. But it very much depends on how close it is on whether an accurate projection, which would not be a certified final result, can be made tonight, depending on what the margins look like and how many of those outstanding ballots have come in today, because it is possible that some of those outstanding ballots could come in today. And again, the Secretary of State says there are about 243,000 outstanding ballots that could still arrive at the County Board of Elections and legally be counted here in Ohio. Now, as you are out there at the polls today, and while you're thinking about what voting means to you, we do want you to let us know. Send us that I voted sticker selfie. You can text that to us at 216-344-3300. You can also send it to us through the WKYC app using that Near Me feature. We'd also love a video from you about what voting means to you, whether this is your first time voting or your 50th time voting. What it means to you, send us a short video, give us your name, where you're from, and a way to reach you so that we can let you know if we will be using your photo or your video in any of our shows or online on WKYC.com and our WKYC app. Another reminder for you, because we can't say this enough on Election Day. If you are in line when those polls close at 7:30 p.m., you can still vote. So stay in line, make it count, Ohio. And here's an important thing to know about. We will, of course, have coverage all night long, and we have a live digital show happening from 8:30 to 10:30. That will be hosted by Jay Crawford, Tiffany Tarpley, and Dave Dino DiNatale. So we'll have live updates from our tabulation team, our reporters who will be on the ground at places around Northeast Ohio. We'll also have commentators checking in with us to let us know what they're thinking about how the races are shaping up and all kinds of stuff. So 8:30 to 10:30, that'll be live on Facebook, on WKYC.com, in our app, and also on the YouTube page. And I'll be checking back with you throughout the night with updates as well, with special editions of 3 News Now. That's it for 3 News Now, the early edition on Tuesday, November 3rd, Election Day. I'll see you next up on What's New with your trending stories and the Clicking in Cleveland segment, also with that legally speaking piece on what it means to certify the election results, who calls it, and when here in Ohio. And I'll see you back here this evening with more 3 News Now as Election Day 2020 continues. Between now and then, everyone stay safe, be well, take a big breath, and try to just shake out that election anxiety, because it will be over sooner or later, hopefully before we know it. I'll see y'all back here shortly. I'm Stephanie Haney.